Back in January, I designed and submitted a LEGO Ideas set based on the Apple TV show called Severance. I'm going to break down the design process and go over why the LEGO Ideas team rejected my project. Let's dive in. If you haven't seen Severance, I highly recommend checking it out. This isn't an ad, but it's really one of the greatest TV shows I've ever seen. It was really well done and was super weird at times, but it dawned on me that this would be a perfect subject to create a LEGO mock for. I figured that since LEGO has done sets for Friends, The Office, and Seinfeld, this should slot right in. As it happened, there weren't any projects on LEGO Ideas for Severance, so I thought this was the perfect time. On top of that, Season 2 will be arriving hopefully later this year, so the timing couldn't have been better. The first thing I designed was the central cubicles. In the show, each quadrant is identical to the others and has wall dividers that can raise and lower for communication and privacy purposes. Coming up with a design that was minifigure scale, customizable for each worker, and had dividers that could function proved to be a rather difficult task. The first design I came up with was far too bulky and ugly. It had way too many pieces and just looked weird. The center post isn't what's supposed to draw attention, and that's exactly what this design was doing. After going through a few more changes and design tweaks, I came up with this design. Not only are the cubicles identical, but the dividers can move up and down, everything is minifigure scale, and the desks are perfectly flush with the edge of the dividers. This minor detail happened unintentionally, but adds a much cleaner look to the design that I was very appreciative of. Once I finished the desks, I was able to use them to come up with a scale for the model. If I tried to keep everything in the scale of the desks, this model would have been massive because of how much open space is in the macro data refinement office from the show. Things had to be scaled down in order to make the set seem a bit more feasible should it be made into a set. Through a lot of trial and error, I ended up with a base that's 38 by 36 studs. Those dimensions are very close to LEGO 21336 The Office, which has a base of 38 by 32 studs. The next step was to figure out how much of the office I was going to build. Originally, I had considered doing the full office with enclosed walls, but I figured that just wouldn't look good for display purposes. I figured I could do a cutaway just like 21336 The Office, which would give more room for playability and display. I had a really tough time deciding what to add in the back of the set. I knew that I wanted to have the lunchroom because there's a few good scenes that take place there, but filling up the rest of the space was what I had to figure out next. I had considered adding in a section of the labyrinth hallway system because that's another interesting part of the Lumen facility. However, I felt that having a large section of hallway wouldn't serve much of a purpose and it would feel pretty underwhelming. Another idea I considered was building the elevator bay where the show introduces us to Mark arriving to work, but I scrapped that idea pretty early on. In the end, I decided to implement the boardroom where the show introduces us to Helly R. It felt like a great fit and I managed to design it so that it would slot right in between the lunchroom and a small section of hallway leading into the macro data refinement office. Initially, I considered leaving the floor of the office studded, but after a bit of testing, I decided to tile it all off. It felt way more finished than leaving the studs exposed. It works in 21336 The Office because a lot of the floor is covered by desks, shelves, paper, and other objects and furniture. However, with my model, there just wasn't enough to cover everything up, and to me, it looked weird. Some of the final additions I wanted to add to the model were some custom decorated minifigures and pieces. Using Photoshop, Illustrator, and Bricklink's part designer, I was able to create and implement some custom designs to multiple parts of the set. I created some Lumen letterheads, the Lumen handbook tote, a Lumen keycard, a sign for the macro data refinement office, and a custom head for Dylan. The head I used for Milchick was first used in the LEGO foosball table and, when designing this model, wasn't yet available in Bricklink Studio. I had to redraw it in Illustrator, then use the part designer to create a custom head which featured the print. After that, I recolored various torsos to match what the characters wear in the show and came up with these minifigures based on Mark S., Helly R., Irving B., Dylan G., and Mr. Milchick. If you've seen the show, you'll know why I chose each of these accessories for each character. If you haven't seen the show, I'll let you watch it to find out why they're relevant to each character. After I finished the minifigures, I wanted to add a couple extra details. There are a few iconic scenes for me that take place in the office, such as the team photo, the melon party, and the music dance experience. What I came up with was a few small models to help establish these scenes. With everything now complete, I went to LEGO Ideas to submit the project. I rendered out various angles of the model that I felt were important and showed off the key elements of the set. Then I formatted them in Photoshop to fit the photo requirements for LEGO Ideas. I wrote a description, included a few Easter eggs, then hit submit. I waited anxiously for the "Congrats, your project is now live, time to start gathering support" email. Instead, I received an email saying that LEGO believes that the show Severance doesn't meet their standards for IP licensing. This was not only disappointing to hear, but incredibly confusing. They listed off the reasons for why Severance didn't meet their standards, and I felt that it should have passed based on IPs that LEGO has worked with and continues to work with. In my opinion, brands such as Star Wars, Indiana Jones, The Batman, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Friends, The Office, Seinfeld, Marvel, and Avatar all violate their acceptable content guidelines. Each IP contains different elements that LEGO claims they want to avoid. There's examples of almost every item on this list scattered throughout these IPs. On its own, Severance contains some swearing, drinking, a bit of violence, blood, and death. Those elements are scattered over the first season and don't occur in every scene of every episode. To this day, I still don't believe that Severance is nearly as guilty as other IPs, but LEGO does what LEGO wants, and Severance is, apparently, not it. Anyways, I wanted to take this opportunity to share my experience designing this model and how things went with submitting and being rejected by the LEGO Ideas team. I hope you found the subject matter interesting and insightful. I realize I haven't yet shown anything that I've actually designed on this channel, which was another reason I wanted to make this video. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a lovely day.